The Cherokee Nation has named its first ever delegate to Congress. The move fulfills a commitment the United States government made in a treaty nearly 200 years ago. That same treaty laid out the forced removal of the Cherokee from their land, leading to the Trail of Tears, where thousands of members of the Cherokee Nation died. Kimberly Teehee served in the White House as President Obama's senior policy advisor for Native American affairs. Now she's the director of government relations for the Cherokee Nation and the vice president of special projects for Cherokee Nation businesses. And Kimberly joins me now from Washington. Thank you so much for joining us, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
So if your nomination is approved by Congress, what is the single biggest issue that you will be fighting for on behalf of the Cherokee and other Native people?
Well, thank you, Elaine, for asking that question. I think probably the number one issue would be appropriations. Many probably don't realize that about 99% of all federal dollars that flow directly to Indian country are discretionary dollars. And so when in times of sequestration, government shutdown, the poorest of the poor suffer. Healthcare systems are stymied. Staff are furloughed and can't provide the services they need to citizens of the tribes. And so because the funding is discretionary, that just devastates us. So there are bills pending presently in Congress that have bipartisan support that would provide advance funding for the Bureau of Indian Affairs as well as the Indian Health Service, and that's a great first step. But it would not cover programs. For example, in the USDA, we have the food distribution programs for Indian reservations. That is also a mandatory program that benefits the poorest of the poor by providing food commodities to tribal citizens, whereas the federal food stamp program, otherwise known as SNAP, is a mandatory funded program. So as you can imagine, it can be quite devastating, and I think it would be the great first step to approach appropriations through advanced dollars, but I'd like for us to strive for mandatory dollars.
And what's your sense of the political landscape? How do you believe the Trump administration has dealt with issues facing Native Americans?
You know, I worked for Congress for many years, and I've worked with Republican administrations, Democratic administrations, and, you know, Cherokee Nation has had success in this administration. You know, I've been around long enough to know some of the political appointees in this administration, and on our tribal-specific issues, we've had great success. And just recently, a Native American was appointed to work in the White House, and so hopefully there will be some national policy proposals that go from there. And just a shout out to Cherokee Nation, that person happens to also be Cherokee. And so I believe in giving everybody a chance and a fair shot in working on our issues, and we've had great luck in this administration.
And Kimberly, you have a reputation on Capitol Hill for your ability to reach across and work with people across the aisle. How will you continue that trend in this hyper-partisan environment that exists now?
You know, I appreciate the question. I don't think anyone working in Indian affairs can get anything across the finish line unless they work on a bipartisan basis. You know, we have a great relationship with our congressional delegation, and they have supported our issues from dealing with our land issues to appropriations on some of our projects. And I would continue to forge ahead and build alliances on both sides of the aisle and hope to find middle ground. I mean, I do believe we have champions on both sides of the aisle. In the House of Representatives today, we actually have 4 members of Congress, 2 Democrat, 2 Republican, who are all citizens of federally recognized tribes. And so the Native American Caucus, which they oversee, is a great entity to continue the effort of working on a bipartisan basis.
The Democrats are, of course, engaged in a primary campaign right now, and I do want to ask you a question about that. Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren apologized to the Cherokee Nation for her decision to release the results of a DNA test showing a distant connection to Native American ancestry. Do you accept her apology?
She absolutely, learned a lesson from, family lore, and in Oklahoma we do hear it often. People often claim connections to Cherokee communities and to other Indian tribes as well. And so I do believe in giving people a second chance to correct mistakes. Actions speak louder than words, and so she has a pretty robust effort in reaching out to Indian country, and so I wish her well in that regard.
Finally, Kimberly, just on a personal note, I wonder what this means for you personally as you embark on this. Obviously, we just said a moment ago that you still need approval. However, given the history and the long and painful history, particularly of the Cherokee Nation and the United States government, what is this moment like for you?
It's emotional. It's absolutely emotional. I mean, my ancestors, blood, sweat, and tears perished in the forced removal where we lost a quarter of our population. And when I was a young person learning that history and working at the Cherokee Nation as an intern for former Principal Chief Wilma Mankiller, who was the first and so far only Native Cherokee woman to be Principal Chief of the tribe, she advised me and guided me and told me to go to law school, which I did, to work in Washington, D.C. and to bring those skill sets back to the tribe because the tribe would always be there. So it's an emotional time. It's also a full circle moment for me as well because I feel absolutely qualified to do the job that the chief has appointed me to and which our council, which unanimously confirmed me for.
All right, Kimberly Teehee in Washington for us. Kimberly, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Elaine.